What's going on, everyone? Welcome into a home edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. We're going to recap the Browns' loss to the Eagles after week 2 of the preseason. Now, quick disclaimer, unfortunately, not able to be in the studio this weekend at all. Had to come home for a wedding, which, quick sidebar, fall weddings should be illegal. Luckily, this one's in August, so it barely got by. It wasn't real football we had to miss. But I did catch the whole game, of course, watching it from my couch. So we're just going to break this down a little at-home video style in my parents' office, which is evidently a home to hoarders because there's a lot of papers around this place. But let's talk about some football, right? Let's start things off with, how about some updates on the injury front right now? Because, well, until Kevin Stefanski speaks to the media, we don't have exact updates, but we can tell you this much. Peregrine Winfrey was seen walking to the locker room just before the 2-minute warning, and we'll talk more about Winfrey in just a moment. A.J. Green was entered into concussion protocol, so those are kind of the two bigger injuries. We saw Herb Miller go down, only to drop what would have been potential game-winning pick six. And if you missed the play, it was a out route right at the goal line, and Herb Miller just had it in the breadbasket and was going to run 100 yards the other way for 6 and couldn't put the squeeze on the ball. But let's talk about Peregrine Winfrey, because here's the thing. In preseason, if you lose, who cares, right? It's preseason football. Tell me what the Rams did in preseason last year. Without even looking, and one of you guys can go look it up and tell me in the comments, I'm willing to bet they probably went either 0-3 or maybe 1-2 because you sit all your starters. So you do learn a little bit about your team at depth, I think, at certain positions. And defensive line has been one of those positions. So I felt after the Jags game, I really wasn't all that concerned with the defensive line as I had been before, right? I scaled back for sure. I thought Elliott looked great. I thought Taven Bryan looked like an NFL starter. Togiai, who I've been pessimistic about, has been watching these videos, and he went out to prove me wrong, evidently. But let's start with Peregrine Winfrey, because this is someone who I think all of us probably got a little bit ahead of our skis on, because we all just did mock drafts and said, get him in the second round. And then he fell to Cleveland in round 4, and it felt like you won the lottery, when maybe we should stop and pump the brakes on a 4th-round pick being a future Hall of Famer before he even plays a regular season game, right? I think maybe as a group, because Peregrine Winfrey was sort of getting blown off the ball. He was not being very assistant in run defense whatsoever. He just wasn't making a lot of plays and wasn't making much penetration on the offensive line. And I would say the Browns' defense fared pretty well. It's backups, right? You didn't see maybe big splash plays like you did last week. No D'Anthony Bell forced fumble, no pick 6 from MJ Emerson, but you hung with the Eagles. You made some plays here. We saw some, Curtis Weaver, for example, had a nice sack towards the end of the game. So I thought the defense as a whole, for being primarily backups, 95% backups who played, were serviceable, right? You gave up 21 points, and you fell short. Now, let me ask you this question here, because that's what we like to do here at Chat Sports. Are you concerned with losses in the preseason, right? Give me a simple Y for yes, N for no, if preseason losses mean anything to you. Personally, they don't. I don't remember any team, except for, no team has ever gotten off to a bad start in the regular season, and then people referenced it with, well, we saw this coming after an 0-3 performance in the preseason. It's all backups. You know what I mean? Now, if you win, it's a whole different story, because you can spin the narrative and you can say preseason is real football, right? But no. Let's talk a little bit more about this game. I had some notes. I just wanted to get through some quick hitters here. Let's see. Yeah, Peregrine Winfrey struggle. So, Demetric Felton, we did not see him much at all. I wasn't able to watch every single snap because I was getting home from this wedding I was at this weekend, but I didn't see him. So, to me, that tells me he was on Kevin Stefanski's good list. It's kind of like in The Office when there's the list of names and you're like, oh, you want to be in this list? Or you want to be in that list from Robert California? Well, no Felton probably means he's a roster lock, right? Stefanski has seen everything he needs to see from him, and he doesn't see any point in tossing him out there and having him play meaningless football, essentially. So I think that's an interesting development right there of Felton. Looks like, especially with maybe some of the run of injuries we've seen at wide receiver this training camp and this preseason, he cemented himself into that 53-man roster. Maybe the biggest story of the game, Cade freaking York. I know. So Cade York, if you missed it, missed a 55-yarder, hit the upright, but it didn't hit the upright. It banged into the top portion of it, which means it would have been good from like 65 or 70, starting to drift back in, hit the right upright. It was a bummer that it didn't go in because everyone was like, you got standing ovation for missing a 55-yarder because he missed it by just not having it down exactly accuracy-wise, but having more than enough leg. Like, it didn't hit the bottom. It didn't hit the crossbar. And I would say if it was like 0 to 50% of the upright, it was 65% of the way up. It was super high. It just showed the leg strength he has. And he's going to adjust to learning to what it's like to kick next to the lake, right? You get the mysterious winds that Phil Dawson talked about. But he'll adjust and he'll learn. He'll take that into account. I'd rather see him miss a 55-yarder against the Eagles in preseason than week 3 against the Steelers. So Cade York, certified baller. Like, I'm still, the hype train has not only left the station, it is going 100 miles an hour down the Autobahn, and it is not stopping for anyone. All in on Cade York right now. All right, let's talk a little bit about Josh Dobbs. Probably shame on me, honestly, slap on my wrist. It's 6.5 minutes into the video, and I'm just bringing up the next Hall of Fame quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, Dobbs has just looked awesome so far in the preseason. He looked great last week against the Jags, and this week he made a spectacular touchdown, a spectacular run to set up his own touchdown run just a play or two later. But Dobbs, I'll read some of his stats right here. Unfortunately, not in the studio, so, don't have the bells and whistles and whatnot. But Josh Dobbs went 14 for 20, 141 yards. He rushed for 47 yards, so nearly 200 yards of offense, and put up 1 touchdown with his legs. Last week against the Jags, he has just been the most stable and consistent thing from preseason so far. Now, it's only preseason, so we're going to talk about Dobbs, and then you'll never hear his name once the regular season starts, hopefully, because, let's face it, I want to see Jacoby Brissett play all 11 of these games, not Dobbs. But, just credit and tip your cap to Josh Dobbs, because preseason football is important for players like this to try and make a name for themselves, to stick around a little bit longer in the NFL. And with Josh Dobbs, we'll kind of end on this note. Josh Rosen, the Browns had an opportunity to try and get into field goal range at the end of the game and set up Cade York for a game-winning walk-off field goal potentially. And ultimately, you saw a false start, and then you saw one of the most just disappointing, underwhelming 4th and 15s where Browns got to get a first down, and Rosen just says, like, Uncle Rico, F it, I'm going to throw it over the mountains, and just overthrew his receiver running on a deep ball by 10 yards at least, and, like, that's the ball game. So, those are kind of my big takeaways right there. Sorry I couldn't do a watch party today for all of you guys that joined us last week. You can blame my cousin. It was a fun wedding, though. Luckily, it was not in real football season. Fall weddings, illegal, should be banned in all 50 states, but it's August, it's preseason. Kind of had to make this one work. Grandma's here. Couldn't disappoint, the matriarchy of this family. So that is going to do it for us on today's show. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Make sure you go ahead and click the subscribe button. If you're looking for like a Browns YouTube channel throughout the entire season, I promise it's not going to look like this for the entire year. I'll get back in the studio with producer Marsh. We'll cook up some graphics. We'll have a great time talking ball and whatnot. So click that subscribe button. Go Browns, and we'll see you guys later.